So, Rebecca, it is the holiday season, which is your favorite time of...
It's horrible.
It's your birthday coming up.
It's a horrible time of year for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Blah.
Yeah. Well, let's distract ourselves by answering some patron emails. What do you say?
I'm ready.
Anonymous listener wrote in and said, I ask this as a genuine question and is not meant as a provocation. Just chiming in here, that's not always
a good sign.
Yeah. Why is being transgender not considered a mental illness or disorder? Mm-hmm. If a man thinks he is a woman, why is this any different than him thinking that he is an animal or the reincarnation of Jesus or Hitler? Again, I mean no disrespect with this question.
Well, it's so disrespectful that I'm like, okay, I just got to let it go.
Yeah.
So gender is a construct. And so you can feel that you're any kind of gender, and that doesn't make you crazy. It means that you are getting to know yourself, and there's no pathology there. A therapist can help you understand yourself better, but you can, as you become your true gender, you are not becoming something outside of the norm. You are embracing yourself, which is different than if you've ever spent any time with someone that's having psychotic symptoms and believes they're Jesus. They're having a completely different process that is psychotic and takes them away from people and away from themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. We could talk for days and days about all the nuances. If someone like this anonymous listener, it seems to be coming from a very uninformed place regarding gender and transgender. But another thing to say is that in the DSM, typically, but not always, in some problematic ways, we consider disorders to have producing problems. If you're depressed, for example, it only qualifies as a disorder if it's causing problems in your life, at work, in your relationships, health, this sort of thing. And it can't be due to oppression. And for transgender people or non-binary people, there's nothing inherent about their identity that causes problems. It's the way society treats them that causes problems. It's why before we woke up about this sort of thing, we considered being gay or lesbian to be a disorder because of oppression and prejudice and bigotry. And they would justify the application of that label because they'd say, well, look how terrible their lives are. Their marriages are falling apart. They're being fired from their job. They're being ostracized by their family. It's causing them to be depressed and suicidal. So obviously this is a disorder. Well, when you have any amount of brain cells in your fucking head, you would know very clearly that it has nothing to do with being gay or lesbian. It has everything to do with the way these individuals are treated. And so being trans or non-binary is the exact same thing.
And so there's some great books out there. This question actually just came up on a witchy Facebook group that I'm on, that as these arguments get more and more prevalent about whether drag queens can read books to children, and people are kind of suddenly aware that there's a spectrum of ways that you can be in the world, and they get very riled up about it, that their children might be exposed to it.
What about the children?
What about the children? So I gave a little book list, but the one of the great pioneers of thinking about this is Kate Bornstein, and she has a book called My Gender Workbook. She also wrote a pioneering text on this called Gender Outlaw that's now like 30 years old. And so I would say to people who are confused by this, spend some time with the great thinkers on this. You know, some of us have been dialoguing on this for 30, 40 years. And so there is a wealth of information of why it's okay. And you may have only been exposed to, you know, this will tear apart the fabric of our society. But actually, many people have been thinking about this for decades, that it only improves the fabric of our society if we acknowledge this. So if this is a question for you, why is transgender not a disorder? Please spend some time and educate yourself. Watch some movies, read some books, listen to some podcasts.
And stop listening to whatever stupid echo chamber is equating being trans with believing that you're Jesus or Hitler, because I don't think that emerged out of nothing. In fact, I'm positive. Children they don't emerge from the womb with these ridiculous notions. They are taught them. And there are echo chambers that exist today, which are really quite prevalent, that will have such notions. Churches, Fox News, certain podcasts, this sort of thing.
And one of my favorite drag queens, I love her Gay Bingo. She also does a drag queen story hour. And there were threats of a protest against her this weekend. And I wasn't able to make it. But the images from, I guess the protesters never showed up, but the counter protesters who were ready, it was such an amazing image of all of these tuba players like lined up, ready to blast away the naysayers. And also, if you've never watched it,
so counter protesters showed up with tubas?
Yes.
And effectively quieted the protesters?
The protesters didn't show.
Oh.
But if they had, they would have been met.
So wait, there were just some random tubas.
People, when this drag queen, Sylvia Ostay-Formore, here in the Seattle area, gives so much joy to so many people. She runs these amazing bingos at senior centers and has the story hour and does, if there is a force for light and good in our community, it is this drag queen. And so when word went out that people were coming to protest her, people showed up. And you may have thought other drag queens showed up. No, your average guy that you know at work who happens to play tuba, who loves to go to Gay Bingo, showed up with his tuba.
Yeah.
It was mostly, it was just really, the photos made me so happy.
Yeah, it gives you hope. And thank God I live in Seattle.
Well, and there's also this great TV show on HBO called We Are Here, which has 3 drag queens who often the people that they're coaching to do drag for one song are trans or non-binary, and really are given, the show is an hour and they follow 3 different people, and they're given an hour to speak about their gender identity and their experience in the world. And the premise is that the 3 drag queens, Bob the drag queen, Shangela, and Eureka O'Hara, all grew up in small towns in the South. And so they go to small towns and put on drag shows. And you really meet some really marginalized people that are finding their voice. So there's 3 seasons right now.
That sounds like a show like Queer Eye that would make me cry at the end.
Oh, sobbing. The season opener, season 3, they get a violent pushback against them. And they, for the first time, have metal detectors and all of this stuff to put on the show. And Bob, who is fiercer than anyone else on the planet, says openly to the production staff, as soon as this is over, I am leaving this town. I do not feel safe. This is not safe. We have to go. So if you need to sob your eyes out, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful show.
Are there ever moments where bigots are turned around, or at least move in a direction that would also give me hope for humanity and make me cry a little bit?
There's all kinds of moments. The first half of the show is getting ready for the show. And so all of the drag queens are kind of out in the community inviting people to the show. And there's always a fascinating moment where someone that you wouldn't expect would say, yes, I'll come to the show. So, there are these tiny shifts. But I think there's also this piece of showing the joy that is transness. Trans liberation is so joyous. And if you've been around anybody who has ripped off what they were told they had to be and become who they wanted to be, or who they were born to be, it's the most exceptional experience you could ever witness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky in that I've been in this process with people for 35 years. In the lesbian community, people started coming out as trans long ago. And so now I've gotten to see people late in their adult life so happy with who they are, and some of them have made their careers, in trans education or creating trans communities. And it's, when I first met them, they were delivering pizzas and pretty sad. Like, it's just glorious what can happen in that unfolding. Mm-hmm. And if we deny people that because we don't understand what's happening, that's us killing joy, and that's for us to become educated.
What's wrong with delivering pizzas? I used to do that.
Well, you can deliver pizzas, and that's great, but this person now makes their living flying all over the country, educating people about trans identity, and that's pretty spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah, it is spectacular. Have you ever had a job like that, like delivering things? I have pulled a lot of shots of espresso. I worked at a deli. I did a lot of daycare. But specifically, like walking up to people's...
I didn't know how to drive till I was 33, so I didn't...
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, typical New Yorker.
No, not New York. Just, that's part of the last podcast. My family wasn't together enough to teach me how to drive, and there was no access to a vehicle, and so it didn't happen.
Interesting. But you got around because you got educated and had jobs, and you just always took public transportation. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to tell you, Rebecca, that the responses, as I think you know, to the last episode you were on about your traumas were very positive and very heartwarming to me. How did it feel to you?
It was very sweet. And the thing I was unprepared for was that the model that we did it in was so touching to people that I, even with my childhood traumas, felt safe enough to ask from you what I needed. And then you provided what I needed, and we modeled that. And then we had an aftercare plan. I mean, many people who wrote me said, I have never seen that before, and I didn't know I was allowed to ask for that. And that was sometimes you think you're like, I'm telling a story. Like, you think you're doing this, but in reality, you're modeling what a caring friendship is. And that was just how sweet that we did that for people, and you did that for me. There's only been positive feedback for me on what happened, and it was neat. And I realized, in the people who liked it, I was like, oh my God, maybe someone in this is is learning to be a curator, and now we'll have questions, or there was a kind of an impact that it was cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did it feel personally, just having the week after you'd recorded the episode? What did it feel like after you did it?
It was a great relief. I mean, I've been thinking about it for years, how to tell that story, where to tell it. I've tried to tell it other places. So to get it out and to have now be a time where people can really get it and put the pieces together. It was like, oh, now's the time, of course.
So you've tried to tell the story before publicly, where?
Well, from time to time, a similar story will come out. Brooke Shields is someone who was really sexualized in photos. And when that was getting talked about, I tried to contact that writer and say, are you looking for other versions of the story? I have a version of the story. Or, just stuff like that. Yeah. And then all of the stuff about how sexualized images of kids show up on the internet. When anyone would write a story about that, I would try and reach out to them.
Huh. But to have full microphone access, I guess, and have a long form interview in a way that you want it to be, and with an audience that knows you more than just a stranger, right? So, I could imagine that would be meaningful. Well, what was it to you?
Yeah, I mean, I it didn't really hit me until that episode that you are not only the content provider of this, but you are also the producer. Uh-huh. And so we could have done that 2-hour interview, and you could have edited it down to 15 minutes, Right. But it was a 2-hour story. And so got to have that long to tell my story and all of its complications. And I did talk a lot about my nightmares in there, and there has been a new permutation. So I told this nightmare where I often get on a bus and it's going the wrong direction and I black out and I can't figure out where I am. And I had a dream. I think I laughed in the dream when it happened, is that I get on the bus, it's suddenly going the wrong way. It's getting on the freeway. And then for the first time ever, I go up to the bus driver and I talk to them about what's going on and where we'll end up. And then I say to myself, oh, I'll just call an Uber at the first stop and then get back to where I need to go. I was like, oh. And then I woke up and I was like, that's so funny that like I didn't end up at the last stop like I'm lost, but like I came up with a plan as things were starting to fall apart, which is a real different shift in that dream. And
did it feel different at the end?
Yeah. I mean, I woke up and I wasn't panicked. I was like, oh, I can just call an Uber when I get where I'm going. Like, it was just a real different feeling. So I'm sure, and so many people reached out and they were, just...
I mean, a part of it was wanting to be believed, right? Mm-hmm. Because it isn't a typical story. Although it does have a lot of typicalness to it, a lot of themes that are common to a lot of Me Too stories, but it's a version of that I don't think people have heard very many times. And there are more slam dunk stories that you could tell, like if he had touched you, this sort of thing, that awareness has gotten to the point where I think most people, you wouldn't have to say much more than just that. But given the somewhat uniqueness of it, my impression is that you had run into a lot of people who just didn't seem to get it. They just seemed to think of it as like, well, why are you so upset about that?
Well, and then also 2 days later, the Balenciaga thing happened where a famous fashion brand had this ad campaign with like children holding teddy bears that were in bondage outfits. And there was this huge outcry. And I remember I texted you and I was like, we're ahead of the curve. We're talking about this stuff.
So to have the audience universally validate, how did that feel?
It was great. I mean, that's all I guess I ever wanted, is that I didn't want to have to explain why this was upsetting. And there was a way, I think the audience was ready for it. And I don't know. It's just, I can't tell you. I mean, all that comes to mind over and over again is that, like, 40 years later, now's the time to tell the story. Like, that's a long ass time to wait. But here we are. And, it worked out. So I can't do that every week, though. Oh, my God. I was like, went home and took a long nap.
The audience and me, maybe, are your Uber on the bus of confusion.
Yeah. Ooh, sorry. That was the water bottle. Yeah, please. If you see me on a bus and I look like I need to talk, please talk to me. I mean, what a different, that's like, it was just so subtle. Like, instead of blacking out, I am approaching someone and saying, hey, what's going on? Like, that's just such a huge shift.
Yeah. Have you had legit nightmares since that point? Where you?
Oh, there's been some other freaky dreams. Yeah.
But of that theme where you're,
I don't know. I mean,
being
things are
led somewhere
so messed up.
Because it'd be interesting. I mean, I wouldn't imagine that those nightmares would go away, but if they did, that would be pretty.
Yeah, I don't think they're going away. And we've talked before that my mother had cancer last year, and her cancer is back, and it's aggressive and very rare. And there's a lot of things to take me down dark rabbit holes right now. So I'll just, that one dream with the bus driver, thumbs up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a shift. I mean, I say this to clients all the time. Oh, you've experienced something different, and now you'll always have that memory that things aren't always the same. Change is possible.
It could, presumably indicate a shift in your feeling of safety or trusting other people, right? Trusting yourself. I don't know. There's something about that dream that seems to, it has a theme of being led somewhere out of your control, further and further away from home, and you have no power to get back home, and you've lost your phone, this sort of thing. And in that different version of the dream, you do have the power. You're just like, one, I can walk up to the bus driver and go like, what are you doing? And two, if I don't get what I want from this bus driver, I'll just get off the next stop and I'll get an Uber. And I trust myself. I trust Uber will work. I trust the Uber driver will get me home. I trust I have a home. I trust this bus driver won't get in my way. I trust the universe that it's not going to cause some sort of weird anomaly to have me not be able to do that. I don't know. It has a security to it.
Yeah, it has a hopeful feeling to it.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, I feel closer to you because of it. You gave me this gift of being able to take care of you, and it was a shift because we talked about last time. You were like, okay, I need this, and at first I'm like, I didn't really know to what extent or to what it, because no one had ever asked me to do these kinds of things. And I'm like, so do you want me to get a blow up bed or something? Because I didn't know. And so it took a bit for me to step into that role of, I guess maybe to make it explicit, I think it wasn't explicit, but eventually kind of thought, I think this is actually emulative of what she's looking for in life in general. And what she missed out when she was young is that she could signal what she needs and that someone would respond. And to be able to do that very easily, but in a purposeful, intentional way, in a caring way, I was like, I really thought about, okay, well, what's the best pillow? What's the best blanket? How do we get this microphone to work? How am I going to see her? Well, I guess I have to sit cross-legged on the floor. That was probably the sweetest part.
You got down on the floor with me. I was like, we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
We're like, this podcast is not like other podcasts. Like we've entered into a new realm of safety and intimacy.
Yeah.
And there are no rules today.
Yeah.
And I get fed at the end. Like it was like we were, in some kind of liminal space.
Yeah. A sacred space like therapy. Yeah.
And it reminded me about friendship too, that I think like
a very weird sleepover.
but during the day. But, in COVID, there was so little intimacy between friends. And, it's something that everyone expressed that they missed the most. And so then you and I had this like crazy intimate experience. And it just reminded me of, how much I hadn't had that in like years. Because like you couldn't touch anybody or be near anybody or like meet anyone's needs because you were so fried that you had nothing to give anybody.
Yeah.
And so here you were acknowledging that I was giving this crazy gift to the universe by telling the story. And then like you're being so generous to me. Like, when does that ever happen?
I mean, I feel like most people are capable, but we don't indicate that we need those things when we need them. It would have been so easy for you to just be like, well, I'll sit in the chair and I'll talk normally and we'll just talk about it. And for you not to, for you to tamp down or dismiss these other needs that you had about laying down and having a blanket and being fed afterwards and, other kinds of things that you were wanting.
The other thing that came out of it that was hysterical is this whole idea of turmeric candles.
Yeah. Suddenly, I don't know if we talked about this on the pod. We probably didn't. But both of us started getting ads for turmeric candles and stuff like that would come up on Instagram and Facebook. And I think it's because I must have Googled it or something. Of course, the conspiracy theorists will believe it's because we just said it and our devices detected what we were wanting. But yeah, so we were texting each other ads that were popping up for both of us about turmeric, various different things.
But I don't know if it's been true throughout my life, but it feels like there's never been more of a time where people just kind of yell the solution at you. Like you haven't even asked and they're like, but the answer is turmeric. And it just seemed like many people resonated that they too, someone had just kind of shoved a message at them. And that, we're craving nuance. We're craving being listened to. We're craving that the answer is not turmeric. The answer is what, just we talked about this when we recorded. It's what do you need? Not let me tell you what you should do, but what do you actually need? That's such a different question. Mm-hmm. And that's actually when I do my tarot workshops. I don't mean to have a catchphrase, but it just helps sometimes to have something. And when people are kind of lost and they're making, I'll walk up to them and say, how can I be of service? And it just, there might be any number of things that they need. But that's, for me as an art therapist, that's such a different way of approaching it as opposed to being like, I think you need a glue stick. Maybe they don't need a glue stick. Maybe I've had people who are like, actually, I need like 8 huge pieces of paper. I'm like, oh, that I can do. So we were definitely modeling being of service as opposed to just shoving answers at each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's take a break. When we get back, patron emails. What do you say?
Okay.
Okay. So Anonymous Annual Upper Tier Patron has a question for me and you, Rebecca. They say, I heard you talk with Bob on an episode last week about always feeling safe with clients, and that some of it could have to do with your male privilege. So just chiming in here, I can't remember what we were saying, but we might have been asked, because I think often the question is coming from a place where people have been fed a stereotype of what a client is.
They'll be dangerous.
Yeah. And they'll ask questions like, how often does a crazy client try to kill you? I don't know. It's not that bad, but it would be something along those lines. And Bob and I were probably going, well, I don't, certainly some things will happen. And the sort of clients we work with, we're not likely to see anything that would challenge us. But, I've never felt unsafe in session. However, we're men, so that's a very different experience. But an annual Anonymous Upper Tier Patron says, could you ask Rebecca, have you ever felt unsafe with any of your patients?
So I've worked in a lot of different settings, and when I worked in adult psych in the South Bronx, there was a male client who had heavy-duty sexual transference towards me. And it got so intense that I don't remember if they had to remove him from the program or what. So that was very unsafe.
So you were a therapist in that role and providing once a week therapy?
It was a day treatment program, so they were around a lot, but I was somehow a primary for casework or something for him.
So you saw him maybe in the hallways and in group therapy situations.
Yeah, and in my office.
So it wasn't just 1 hour a week. It was frequently coming across him.
Yeah.
And what did he do that concerned the staff?
He let them know that he wanted to marry me and was kind of making moves towards that.
And was he delusional or?
He was delusional.
Okay.
Yeah. He had a history of psychosis. It was not safe.
Did he have a history of violence or?
I don't know, but in that setting, people became violent all the time.
Yeah.
So.
What about regular office therapy outside of that?
We screen clients. I'm sure you did too when you were doing office work. And if someone doesn't seem like a good fit, I've had clients who are super angry at me. There's only been one client that I've ever fired, and it was someone who was just continually really rageful towards me. And I was like, this is not, I don't know what this is, but this is not therapy. And I can't work with this level of rage.
And because you felt unsafe, you terminated?
It was just not good. I don't know if it was unsafe. But it is really interesting right now. Crime is skyrocketing in Seattle. And just in my neighborhood, a shop owner has been shot. A little farther north, a shop owner was killed. There's
what shop?
What shop was someone killed?
Yeah.
At the Postmate on Union and Martin Luther King.
What's a Postmate?
It's a mail delivery place.
In Columbia City.
Just a little north in the Central District, but I'm on that street all the time. A little further north from me, in an African store, someone came in and shot the guy that was running behind the guy who was running the store behind the counter. They broke into the donut store. They broke into the dry cleaners. They break into stores just north of me in Columbia City all the time. And for the first time ever, I didn't know if I was safe or not in my building. And I've talked to my suite mates. I've talked to the businesses that are also in the building, just saying, like, we've felt really, really safe here for a really long time. So there's an issue of physical safety now that feels really different. And of course, like, I didn't know what to do, so I got like some witchy bells that I put on my door
what was that?
for protection. There's in witchiness. There are 3 bells that you can get to hang on your door for protection. I was like, what am I gonna do?
Was it like garlic to keep out the vampires or something?
Yeah, I was like, what are my options here? And then I got one of those light bulbs that's really a camera. But like beyond that, there's pretty much nothing I could do.
Well, you could lock your door when
yeah, I always do that. I worked in the South Bronx City. Like, my door is always locked.
Yeah.
But also right outside my office, there's been 3 car accidents. It's like the road kind of turns, and that's a famous place for people speed. And there's been 3 car accidents in 3 months. So part of the bells is like to psychically protect. There's a lot of craziness out there. And
I bet you the biggest flashpoint of danger for you would be walking from your door to the car.
Thank you for reminding me of this.
So I don't know what to do about that exactly.
I mean, I have my dog with me.
That 3-pound little...
Mochi has pierced flesh if she feels... She once bit through someone's thumb who she thought was attacking. So
I can't see that, but...
It could happen.
All right,
I'm at least telling the world that right now so they know. She's only 9 pounds, but she will bite you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a messed up time in the world right now, and I've always felt really safe in Seattle, and I don't necessarily feel safe right now.
Yeah. What about with just clients? Have you ever had a client where you're, sitting there going, oh, is this person going to get me somehow?
It hasn't happened to me. I have seen someone was shot in front of them in a counseling office. So it happened. I mean, I know it happens. I know another person who was attacked quite severely in an inpatient unit. So these things, it happens. It's part of the work. It's never happened to me. But I have witnessed, on inpatient, I've witnessed some really violent stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's, but as, I think I hope everyone in private practice who sees people in person does this. Like, if I just get a bad vibe off of someone, or they're giving me like too much information in the initial reach out, I don't even call back. That's like a red flag for me, that they're going and going. They're going on and on and on and on and on and on.
Oh, what? So tell me again.
So, people email me all the time.
Yeah. Just to hire you as a therapist.
Yeah. And if the question just isn't, I'm referred from this person, can you see me? It's, here's every single detail of my life. That's just, for me, I know that the client's not going to be a good fit.
Yeah. Because what are you predicting? Because
they'll need to share a lot of content and feel like they need to give me a lot of history, and there'll be a lot of explaining. And the way that I work is much more body-based. And it's like, we don't need all that content.
Yeah.
It's actually not going to help you to tell me
So style-wise, it's not that you feel scared. It's that you just have seen before that style-wise, you're not the therapist for them.
Yeah. There was once somebody in the last year who was doing a hard sell who kept writing back to me and saying this person had referred them to me, but I didn't know that person. And I was like, is this like an ethical issue? But at some point I just had to say, I don't know that person. I don't know that person.
Yeah.
I don't know who that person is or why they thought we'd be a good match, but I don't know that person. You're not doing yourself any favors by keep bringing up this person that I don't know.
Yeah. What do you mean? So they emailed you and you indicated that you were on the fence and they were trying to
No, I
convince
didn't respond at all.
Oh.
And they responded back. And, a couple days later they wrote back and they were like, they used the name again. This person referred me. And I had to write and say, I don't know that person.
Yeah. So I guess that's what, I don't do that, but it's because I am an old person who never really changed my ways. My email address isn't available to the public such that a client would ever do that. I would only accept phone calls and voicemails.
Back in my day, it all took place over the barbell.
So to hear that for you, people will get your email and inquire. But I think that's what most therapists do today. Like their website will have a form that you fill out and make a request for engagement as service. And I've never had that. And I think that would be hard to manage because I would want to hear their voice. And anonymous upper tier patron, she says, my partner of 3 years is well regarded as a masseuse and physical therapist in his city. My partner of 3 years is a well-regarded masseuse and physical therapist in his city, and he was recently accused of serious sexual assault. Serious sexual assault. In a situation like this, is it possible to support an accused loved one, but also believe women when they say they were sexually assaulted? The two ideas seem impossible to coexist. Rebecca.
Yeah, it's very complex, but I think you can care about someone who's done something wrong. You're probably going to have to come up with your own sense of that. I mean, there's probably a lot of connotations here. Can you continue your relationship with this person? I would hope that you are working with a professional on this one because this one is really, really hard. It's getting more and more common in our culture that people get accused, and how do you support and be there for the person that you love, but also is it going to change the way you view that person is another piece of this.
Yeah. For myself, I guess I would just speak from if I were in your shoes, and it would be very hard for me, obviously, and I would have a lot of ups and downs and backs and forths, but I would hope that at the end of the day, it depends on where you're at in the process, right? But it sounds like you're at the beginning of the process, patron, where the accusation has been made and you know about the accusation, but there hasn't been a hearing or any kind of evidence necessarily, but maybe there has been. But anyway, for me, if I were in your shoes, I would say, well, people don't usually accuse people of these things unless it happens. So there's a pretty good chance that something happened. So there's that. But there's a chance that there's another story. There's another possibility. It's less likely, but still an absolute possibility. Misunderstanding or someone just flat out lying. That happens sometimes. And this notion of like believe all women is a good movement to emphasize to a culture that is the opposite, but that's not the end place of wisdom we want to be, where every woman who comes forward with an accusation is believed. I mean, no, at the very least, we should really be pushing it back up against our culture that usually disbelieves all women. So that's what I would hope that I would land on. And then I would want to know personally, I don't know how I would get that information, but I'd be like, get me the report. Can I talk to the victim? I don't know. Like, obviously I'd talk to my partner and say like, what's your side of the story here? Because I don't know, a lot hinges on what happened there,
Yeah. And I do know recently of a false report that was made for political reasons, but also like, I mean, I hate to like nitpick this stuff, but if it's, is it one person, is it many people who made the report?
Are there any possible ulterior motives?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but the temptation for people in this situation is to look for, to cherry pick any reason to disbelieve the victim. Not only because that's the tendency in our culture anyway, but because you desperately don't want to believe this, Yeah. So I personally would try to be as objective, so to speak, and wait until I get the information. Now, my partner, there's a chance that he is being falsely accused. And when he comes to me and he, let's say he says, I'm being falsely accused, I don't necessarily want to say to him, given my level of information darkness, that I would say to him, well, I'm on the fence, because I would probably, in a diplomatic way, support him and be with him. And if he asked me flat out, what do I think? I would say like, well, I mean, to be honest, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to think you did anything like that. And I've never seen any indication that you do anything like that, but I know enough to know about this sort of thing that doesn't necessarily mean something didn't happen. I don't know is the thing. I believe you that you believe you didn't do anything, and I'll support you. But to tell you the truth, I kind of want to know the full story from you and everyone else. But I still love you, and I'm not going to jump to a conclusion on this. I just don't know, and that could cause some conflict, right? That your partner could really be hurt by that, depending on how you approach it. So, that's a tough situation to be in. But I wouldn't be comfortable lying. I wouldn't lie to my partner and say, I totally believe you when I have a question mark about that. I also wouldn't want to just leave him hanging out to dry, because what if they are being falsely accused? I mean, that's a pretty shitty partner that just like any old allegation comes along and you just completely reject him. So, but that's me. And then once I had an idea of what actually happened, or what might have happened, which might not ever happen, but if it did, then I would evaluate what I want to do about the relationship, because it's possible that I don't want to be in the relationship anymore, but it's also possible that someone could vindicate themselves. They could do the right thing as a victim, as a perpetrator. The perpetrator could admit it, confess, get help, work on themselves. You as a partner to that, you don't have to be around, but if there's nothing wrong, but the way society reacts to people like this is like, how can you possibly still be married to that creep when things are more complicated, right? I can't imagine, given today's landscape, how you would navigate all the relationships. Your coworkers, if it's public, which it sometimes is, friends, family would come to you and say, like, you're still in a relationship with him? Like, what's wrong with you? You're part of the problem. Like, you're supporting him? What's wrong? It would, or you question it and his family comes after you and says, how dare you not support your husband? Right. It's just, people get real black and white about this sort of stuff. And I think that's why it's so hard for victims to come forward, because the black and white nature in which people react, it can ruin people's opportunity for healing and growth and justice. Patron Emily DM'd me on Patreon and said, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about today's news of entertainment Steven Twitch boss completing suicide. He became, by the way, chiming in, Rebecca, you actually texted me and said, let's talk about, so going on with the email. He became famous on So You Can Think You Can Dance and worked as a DJ on The Ellen Show for years. Him and his wife, Allison, were active on social media, often posting fun TikToks dancing together, some with their children. It's a really shocking story, because on social media, he seemed to be so happy and cheerful. He had a seemingly beautiful marriage and great relationship with his children. He even posted a TikTok of him dancing happily 1 or 2 days before his death, and posted one celebrating his wedding anniversary with his wife 4 days before his death. People on social media are likening the shocking news to when Robin Williams completed suicide. Both were funny, charismatic figures who always seemed to be happy. We are often told to check in on our friends who are withdrawing socially and exhibiting signs of depression. But should we also be checking in on the overly cheerful ones? Rebecca, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll just read what I wrote to people yesterday. I was really messed up by Twitch's death. I watched a ton of The Ellen Show, and he was such a huge part of that. I don't even remember The Ellen Show before he was a part of it. He brought so much joy to so many people. And so in the therapy field, I think it's like every 5 years or 2 years, you have to take a training on depression and suicidality.
Yeah.
And the last
in
time,
Washington State,
to keep my license. And the last time I took it, the presenter really drove home. First off, the people who complete suicide most successfully are older men, and it's most often with a gun. So I checked in with all my male clients, specifically if they had guns in the house, and found out one did. And then the other thing is, the most effective thing you can do is just reach out to people and say that you care. So some version of this got sent to my inner circle. I don't know if they're having a hard time or not, but I just needed to do this because...
On Facebook or something?
I messaged people because... what Twitch is...
Am I not in your inner circle or something?
I knew I was going to see you and talk about this. So I thought I'll just see him and tell him. You're always on me about that. So I don't know if people are hurting or not. I mean, that's what Twitch's suicide reminded me. People present in all kinds of ways, and they can be having all kinds of different thoughts on the inside. So I wrote to people some version of this. In honor of Twitch's memory, I just want to tell you how fantastic you are. What a great daughter, auntie, friend, and community member you are, and how much you make the world a better place, and how much you've made my life better. You have made me laugh and think of my future on my darkest days. And the response I got back was unbelievable. People's outpouring back. Oh, wow, I really needed that today. Thank you so much. And it just, I thought, God, if we can just do an avalanche of love to each other in Twitch's memory, I don't know, maybe that's the best thing that can come out of this. I mean, also what's coming out of this is not only masking in general, but the amount that Black men have to mask to make it in the world, and how rough they're feeling on the inside and things that they cannot say. And, you know, if there's one group that's really excluded from traditional therapy, it's Black men. The dynamics of it don't always work, and a new style, often the way the therapists are trained to kind of go at feelings, aren't really appropriate from someone who's never been told that they've been allowed to have feelings, because showing any feeling is a sign of weakness. So I have tons of thoughts, and I'm really glad we're talking about this. I had clients sobbing in my office yesterday. I was sobbing right there along with them. I think it's just so scary to think, you know, we don't know what's going on for someone. Mm-hmm. There's such a loss of control in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like with Robin Williams and other public figures, we have to understand our prior social relationships with them aren't like they're a friend. We don't know what went on with him, but I'm going to take a guess.
Anthony Bourdain is like a classic example.
Right. I'm going to take a guess and say that his wife, Twitch's wife, knew much more nuance to his moods and what was going on with him than we do. It can feel like we have a relationship with these people, and we do, but it can feel like we know them, like we understand them. And then when something like this happens, we're like, what? So I think that is one aspect of this that I think can be extra confusing. But another thing is, even if you're close to someone, not usually a partner, but you could be best friends, or this could be a sibling that you confide with. There are times when suicidality or suffering in general could be masked or hidden or sudden, or happens only at certain times, or a variety of different things. And so it is scary to think about that, and it does happen. Plenty of suicides occur without people, at least on a couple layers out, people that are close, but maybe not super on the inside, without them knowing anything about the suicidality. There's a good chance that listeners out there, you have what you consider to be close friends who have chronically thought about suicide, and they've never told you because they're ashamed, or they feel like they're going to bother you with it, or they just don't want to talk about it because it's really hard for them to face, or they only want to talk with certain people about it or something. There's a lot of people with these thoughts, and it's a lot more common than I think people know. And then when these things happen, we're suddenly faced with that reality that, like, oh, that's right, this is a thing. And typically we worry about being murdered or people being harmed in these ways, but suicide is way more frequent. I think like double frequency than murder in the United States. Guns kill more people in suicide than they do otherwise. I don't know all the stats on it, but it's a concern that we often will sweep under the rug, and it's not a pleasant thing to think about, obviously. And if we thought about it more, we might be able to reduce the incident of it. The other thing is, suicidality can exist within a person who is legit joyful and enjoying their marriage and their children. We have this notion that if someone's chronically suicidal or depressed, that their life is chronically all the time 24/7 depressing and sad and not happy. But that's not true. People can have joyous moments, especially people who have ongoing depression and ongoing suicidality, because they've learned to just accept that it's just a part of their life, and they eke out joy when they can. It's also possible that he was, as you're saying, Rebecca, masking, and that at least a portion of the time when he appeared to be joyous, he wasn't actually joyous. He could have been legit celebrating life and legit celebrating his marriage and legit celebrating his children, but there could have been, and I don't know, a dark cloud over him at all times that he just didn't feel like sharing with the public, which you could understand for various different reasons, or had a hard time admitting to himself, or who knows. There's also a possibility that as more information comes out, that something happened within the last month or something that was particularly difficult.
Suicide, if he was just turning 40, I mean, there's all of these things. Is there anyone in his life who had committed suicide around that same time? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think of it with suicide that there's like a window that gets opened and someone else's story. I mean, this is why it happens. Sometimes it can happen in groups, especially in high schools. A lot of people can, it's called a cluster or something, that when a bunch of suicides happen. Yeah,
what's it called? I mean, cluster is one word, but yeah, there's another word for it. I can't remember.
Please type it in the chat if you remember the word. Yeah. So, it's kind of when a suicide happens, or if it's an anniversary of someone's suicide, I always kind of think of it as like a door or a window opens where it feels like an option, where it may be closed a lot of the time. But I was really thinking on the drive up here how you sign off telling people that you care about them and that they're worthy. And I was curious if this is connected to that, if you tell people they're worthy in order to impact a sense of their depression or their suicidality, or where that came for you.
Not specifically, but yeah, that's a part of it. So many people including often a lot of suicidal folks, the conclusion they have been told or demonstrated or have come to is that they don't deserve any care or to reach out, that no one cares. A key factor has been found by research regarding not only attempts but completions of suicide is what they call thwarted belongingness, meaning that
Thwarted
belongingness.
Oh, that's the name of
Yeah.
my memoir.
We all want to belong. We're social creatures. We're attachment creatures, and we're constantly trying to establish connection and bond and loyalty and understanding and love and security and all the things. And when we continually reach out or bid for that and get thwarted, then something kicks in for some people where they say, I don't want to live anymore. I can't do this anymore. What's the point in doing this? No one cares. And the key, the antidote is belongingness. And like you said, reaching out. But even more so than that, just being with. Because intellectually, in our typical world today, we connect over phones and internet and stuff. But we are three-dimensional animals. You text a monkey a picture of a banana. I don't think the monkey cares about a emoji of banana. The monkey wants the banana. The human wants the human. The human wants not an emoji of a human or a text of a human. The human wants the human, the three-dimensional human in the flesh, in the blood. And when we are with people, it's research shows, and this is always what I'm trying to get my suicidal clients to get to, and we will explicitly write this into the safety plan, I'll call their family members and their support system around this, that when there are spikes of intention of suicide, that someone is literally with you within 2 feet of you or 5 feet of you at all times. They don't even have to do anything. They just have to be there. And almost all the time, that will eliminate the high level imminent intention of suicide. It's isolation and loneliness that will spike the intention. And so, by the way, I know people listening out there, some of you suffer from this to varying degrees. And of course, talking with your therapist, getting a therapist, and if you don't have one, calling the national hotline, the National Suicide Hotline. And
which is 988 now?
I don't know.
Okay. you should
National
probably say
Suicide Hotline. 988. And so understand that the hotline is run by trainees, that they're not clinicians, and they have varying degrees of ability. So, they're not going to solve all your problems, but typically they'll be able to...
They're going to listen.
They'll listen and might be able to point you in a direction in terms of a service or, some kind of help in your area or something.
And the reason they created this new service is to shorten wait times so that people could quickly speak to someone. Because of what we're talking about, that when you feel that low, the research shows that if you can feel that someone cares and that you're not alone, there's actually a serotonin hit that happens, right? And, that's the goal here, is to reawaken the brain to connection and know that you're not alone. Yeah.
Now, having said all that, some people will complete suicide for other reasons, like health, and they feel connected, but they're despondent or demoralized for some other reason. But that's rarer, and so I don't want to simplify it. But yeah, it's shocking, and the fear that you feel, Patron or Emily, is your body's, I think, I can't interpret it, but I'm guessing that fear response is, I don't want to lose people close to me.
Yeah. So
use that fear to connect and to give and to build. That fear is telling you to do something. When you see your toddler meander close to the street, you have fear, and it motivates you to do something. You run over to your toddler and you grab the toddler. Your fear is telling you to do something about it. Don't just sit there and go, how do I cope with this fear? Like, use the fear.
And literally people have said to me, I don't know how to reach out. And so I posted that script on my Instagram and other social media, like, just use this. It seemed to be effective yesterday. I mean, often people get hung up like, oh, what would I say? And I don't want anyone to feel bad. And I say all the time, when was the last time you told someone that you cared about them? Trust me, they don't hear it enough. If they give you a hard time for telling them, that's just more information. But I did a little survey yesterday, and everyone I reached out to I got 100% back that it was a good idea that I reached out and said I cared. Mm-hmm. So, do your own experiment. Test it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's take a break. Get back. Okay. Just a few more emails. What do you say?
Okay.
All right. Anonymous patron, she wrote in and said, I recently had a first appointment with a therapist, and upon calling my name in the waiting room, she walks up to me and says, oh my God, you're so beautiful. Wow, I'm shocked. And she went on and on about it for a few seconds. Obviously, it's nice to hear on one level from your therapist, but I was kind of embarrassed and felt sort of uncomfortable with her for the rest of the session. She herself was attractive, so I think that kind of made it weird for me too. I'm queer, but I'm not used to getting attention from attractive women. I know she wasn't hitting on me or anything, and probably thought it was a benign comment, but something about it didn't feel genuine maybe. I'd be interested in what you think of this interaction, Rebecca.
I think that's a little much for a first meeting. I probably wouldn't meet someone with that. You don't know if that's a compliment to someone or if that's going to make someone feel like they need to perform or say it back to you, but they know they can't because you're a therapist. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes, especially like in the queer community or marginalized communities, you want people to know that they're beautiful because maybe they were told that they're not. Mm-hmm. But I would maybe not do that the first session. And I don't know if I've ever said something. I don't know if I've ever complimented someone more than once in a session. Like if there's something important, like you really did a great job, I'll just say it once. But I would never say like, you did a really great job. And oh my God, I'm so surprised. What a great job you did. Because then it's more about me.
Well, plus a good job is such a different message and vibe and more expected in therapy than a therapist commenting on a client's looks at the very first moment upon meeting. Now, I could see someone pulling it off if they have that kind of vibe where they are, I don't know. I don't have that vibe. I don't know. I don't think you do either. but
I don't have that vibe.
I think it's a very specific vibe of, I'm that sort of person who makes those kind of comments, and it's understood when you understand me as a whole that I'm not hitting on you, or I'm not even necessarily commenting on your attractiveness, but that I just see you as a beautiful human being, and I can see the beauty of you. You
look marvelous, darling.
Yeah, something like that. And I can see someone pulling that off, but yeah, hard to know. And of course, anonymous patrons, just talk about it. It's a wonderful thing to bring up with your therapist. Be like, so it's nice that you told me that, but I felt kind of weird about it. Can we talk about that? Because, if that's going to interfere with your relationship, then that could be a barrier.
Right. And what about next time if they don't tell you that you're beautiful? Right.
Or another client hears you because they're walking in the lobby at the same time and they're thinking, well, you never say that to me. Am I disgusting to you? Yeah. Yeah, it's not a very common thing, I'll say, that therapists will spout in the waiting room to a brand new client.
I'd be very curious of the sexual orientation of the therapist.
What would that?
Well, there's a couple ways to go. So if they're queer themselves, they are, I think this is just me projecting all over the place, but I would imagine that they think that they are joining in the client's queerness and celebrating it by saying that they're gorgeous because we're also gorgeous in the way that we present. If they're straight, I think there's kind of an anxiety part to it where they want a queer person to feel really comfortable and really grounded, and they think that mentioning their appearance over and over again will benefit that. I had this happen in a friendship, and it was very awkward. The straight woman kept telling me how beautiful I was, and I was just like, can you just stop? Like, it's just, I don't know what you're trying to do, but like,
what was the tone?
It was just like, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but there's this certain tone that I associate with straight white women where they just get very excited. Like your dog is right now.
Oh, yeah, she heard you.
She wants to tell me how beautiful I am. They just get very excited, and they think by sharing their excitement with you, you're going to get excited too. And, you know, what they want you to know, in this case, this woman that I used to be close to always wanted to tell me how beautiful I was. And I was just like,
what was her intention? What was her?
I think her intention was that, like, maybe I didn't know I was beautiful, or like, all women are beautiful and let's just like celebrate each other.
Did she do it with other people, do you think?
I don't know, but she definitely did it with me in almost every interaction, and it made me really uncomfortable, and I didn't really tell her, and I just kind of, the friendship just kind of faded away because it was like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't care how you perceive me.
Yeah.
And you know, and then like as a queer person, like you start going crazy in your head, and you're like, are you telling me this because I'm queer? And you think like I need to hear it, or I don't know, but it is a weird thing between gay people and straight people, especially gay women and straight women.
I could see gay guys and straight guys having similar conversations. I could see that happening. Absolutely. That's interesting.
Because I'm like presenting outside of the norm, but they want to tell me that it's okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I didn't investigate, and I just like let the friendship fizzle off.
I'm just going to throw this out there as another hypothesis as to why straight people might do this. As a straight person myself, is that to straight people like myself, queer people seem freer and more glorious in a lot of ways. Because of the shackles of bigotry that queer people have effectively fought against for so many decades. As a whole and as a movement, it will shirk a lot of the ridiculousness of our culture, including being suppressive of your emotions and expression or something. And as a straight person myself, when I, like gay pride parade and just dance club culture and a lot of things like this. And of course, gay people, queer people aren't a monolith, but I could imagine a straight person approaching you and feeling like, I want to be free too. And you're queer, so you're free, and I just want to say stuff, and I want to celebrate, and I want to acknowledge like people's beauty, or I want to connect on that level of like freedom. I want a little bit of that queer freedom in my straight-laced world or something. I don't know. Am I making any sense?
Oh yeah. I mean, but for me, I would just be like, then just go do it. Like you have all the permission in the world and no one will stop you.
Yeah.
So go right ahead.
Don't splat your freedom on me.
If I try and do it, if I present, like I'm going to Mexico and I'm like, I would be fascinated if there's any more anxiety producing aspect of the lesbian body than like, what do you wear in the predominant straight environment swimming pool experience? Do you go typical with the sports bra and the way too big swimming trunks? Do you actually show your body? What do you do? And I've spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to come up with what I want to wear in public.
Well, what do you like? I could imagine what the concern is, but what's the concern exactly?
I mean, the concern is I don't want the male gaze on me, and I don't want to. It's what straight women are shown to wear. Some queer women feel comfortable in those things. I do not. It does not work for my gender presentation. So I have to like cobble together something. What's super funny is like last year or the year before, I found it was like $4. It was like 90% off at Two Big Blondes, which is one of my favorite thrift stores, and they specialize in size 12 up to 5X. And this bathing suit, for the first time in my life, it covered a lot of my body and it fit really well, to the point that my very butch friend that never notices anything fashion-wise said to me, "That looks really good on you." I was like, this is hysterical. And it has like so much support on the inside to like hold everything in place. And there's so much like ruching and stuff. And I was like, oh God, this is what it takes. Like I just want to cover most of it up. And, we live in a culture where women are, one of the main options is like to show a lot of it. And then you have to like shave everything. And like, there's a whole level of gender.
You don't have to shave everything.
You don't have to shave everything. And for those of you who don't, more power to you.
Well, couldn't you just wear like a blousey blouse? Because to
but
me,
then you actually want to get in the water, and there's like trust me, there are several outfits, and there's like, there are some things that I would actually. Sun,
like to me, I will often wear one of those, I don't know what you call them, but like an aqua shirt, I guess, one that blocks the sun, because when you're going in and out of the water, your sunscreen will wash off. And I grew up in a time when we would literally
size 2 SPF 2, or you put baby oil on.
I did not know about SPF until the 90s. We would, on purpose in my family, it was a whole routine. My mom and my siblings and I, in June, at the first chance we could, we would on purpose get burnt. We would lay in the sun as long as we could, or play in the sun or whatever. And then the next day, we would take turns literally peeling a huge sheets of dermis or skin off the top.
This is very weird.
And or it would blister, and we would slowly and so that was what, in my family and my community, that was what you needed to do, because in order to get a base of brown so that you wouldn't burn later on in the summer, you had to burn. The point was you had to burn at some point, and so you might as well get it out of the way early, and then you get brown. And me and my siblings get pretty brown, particularly my younger brother. He would turn just brown, and then you wouldn't get burnt anymore. And so it's all part of the process, and whatever sped that up, that's what we did. We did that every year.
Wow.
For 15 years or longer. I've since understood the science about that sort of thing. And so I absolutely hate getting sunburnt now. And so I don't get, almost naked the way that I used to when I was young.
Skin cancer runs in my family, and I get the full body cancer scan once a year. So it's funny that I'm talking about like putting on a bathing suit, because when I do, I like find the shady end of the pool.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's not like just my body's ever seeing the sun, but I want to get in the water, but like I'm wearing a huge hat. And I will say, the last time that I saw my dermatologist, he complimented me on how I was completely cancer-free, having the year before had some precancerous stuff on my nose. So, but I think this is inherent in being queer, is like how I'm spending all this time thinking about how I present. Will anyone even notice? No. But these are the struggles that I have inside about how does my gender identity and the pressures of society meet, and I'm assessing it, whereas most people are just kind of like, meh. But
I think every American has a copious amount of body shame and concern, but you have this extra worry. So what's the worry like within? What's the reasonable case scenario that would happen in Mexico to you? Like,
I don't even know what I'm worried about anymore, because also as a 52-year-old woman, no one has noticed me in 10 years. So it's like I'm also invisible, which is like this whole other thing. But my thing is, I just want to feel comfortable. And
that's why you have a blousey blouse.
And even at 52, I still am working it out. But it appears that this one suit that I found for $4 looks good on me.
$4?
$4. It was used. And it's like, I'm like, how do I get another one? Like, I should look up what brand it is and buy 2 now, because they're probably stopped making this amazing swimsuit. But like, I went on LL Bean and bought a ton of like size 18 swim stuff, and it came and it was too big. And, I'm still figuring it out. I'm sure many listeners can relate that like it's overwhelming for me to figure out what I feel comfortable in out in the world.
Yeah.
In my body.
Yeah, along those lines, if you're on Patreon and you want to comment below, relating or not relating to what Rebecca is saying right now, that's a great place. We're trying more and more to pay attention as hosts of the podcast to the Patreon, conversation.
I found it was a lovely way to connect with people.
Yeah. So let's all connect over blousey blouses.
And if you want to connect with me on social media, I'm mostly on Instagram at rtext, RTEXT. Kirk, you can find in thousands of places.
Well, less and less over time, because I'm pulling back from social media more and more.
I took Twitter off my phone today, mostly because it was taking up too much space.
But I mean, my God.
What a shit show.
I mean, yeah. I mean, did you like Twitter? I thought we already talked about this.
Like, it was great for news. Like, if you needed to know what was happening immediately, that's where I would go.
Yeah.
There's also was quite an active therapist who Twitter thing. And, it wasn't great for me. I don't miss it. I know some people just loved it and it was their primary thing. Yeah, but me, I misspell every other word. So in Twitter, it's not my best form. Instagram is, I can take a good photo anytime, anywhere.
Well, I recommend Reddit for news and for micro communities. I love Reddit. I find it, it's the internet and it's humans, so it has its ups and downs.
But I think that ranking system is really interesting.
Exactly, yeah. And it's totally understandable in terms of how the conversation is happening on Twitter. I never understand what's happening. I just see these we've already been over this, but there's a way to see it, but I never took the time to figure it out. And I'm glad I never did, because
now it's dead.
I killed my account. I periodically would cancel Twitter. I think I've been on and off Twitter a number of times over the past 15 years. And the only reason why I was on is because people are always yelling at me like, you need to be on Twitter. And I'd be like, okay, fine. and so, yeah, but I'm gone for good, because there's, I don't know. I feel like I
There's
reached,
serious bad vibes over there.
Well, not only that,
they're not in good swimsuits over
there. Yeah. They have not shaven.
But shave, don't shave. It's not. Who am I to judge?
Yeah. But
they are burnt to a crisp over there.
Yeah. There's a lot of cancer growing. But I feel like I crested a hill over the last few years of becoming kind of burnt out on social media to some extent, and just don't feel the motivation like I used to, even in my personal life. I mean, I still feel some motivation, more so than I think the average person my age, but much less so. Anyway, but we're still on Instagram, and so is Rebecca, our text. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because
we really care about you. We want you to know that from the bottom of our hearts.
You should read that thing again to everybody.
Oh, okay. Okay. I have tiny hands, and this is going to take a minute. Okay. In honor of Twitch's memory, I just want to tell you how fantastic you are. what a fantastic daughter, auntie, sister, and friend and community member you are, and how much you make the world a better place, and how much you've made my life better. You've made me laugh and think of my future on my darkest days. Take care of yourself.